Welcome back to EFD, where today we're running through 10 clubs that destroyed their reputation. Whether they sold their soul for big money, messed over the fans, or even had their own supporters make a mockery of the game, these clubs have had some explaining to do at one stage or another. Let's go. 10. AC Milan. AC Milan were once one of the biggest clubs in world football, and their history still holds up against the very best. Their 7 European Cups is second only to Real Madrid, while their 18 Serie A titles is only beaten by Juventus. But in the last 10 years, the club has lost a lot of its prestige, with their last appearance in the Champions League coming all the way back in 2013-14. Struggling without the lucrative UCL money and no longer able to compete for Europe's biggest stars in the transfer market due to the emergence of newly muddied outfits like PSG and Man City, long-time owner Silvio Berlusconi sold the club in 2017. And while investment in the side has risen since, results on the field haven't got much better. And the club's continued struggle to generate revenue saw them banned from European competition in 2019 for breaching financial fair play regulations. Once a bastion of wealth and style in football, Milan has lost its glamorous image, and it shows. In 2003, the Rossoneri ranked as the third richest club in the world. Fast forward 17 years, and they have dropped out of the top 20 below West Ham and Everton. 9. 1860 Munich. The 50+1 rule, which dictates that clubs in the top two divisions are majority owned by the fans, is sacred in German football. For example, it's one of the main reasons tickets to big Bundesliga games are relatively cheap, and also explains why RB Leipzig, whose corporate structure makes a mockery of the rule, are widely disliked among supporters in Germany. And in 2011, 1860 Munich, a founding member of the Bully and one of its first champions, were effectively forced to circumvent 50+1 after years of poor financial decision-making, in particular committing to build the Allianz Arena with rivals Bayern before being relegated to the second tier, which plunged them into debt. The club needed €8 million to avoid bankruptcy and turned to oil and real estate magnate Hassan Ismail, who bought a 60% stake despite only obtaining 49% of the voting rights. Nevertheless, the club had effectively sold their soul to survive, and they've hardly even managed that. In 2017, they were relegated to the third tier, and when Ismail refused to pay the license fee needed to play in the Dry Liga, they were demoted one step further to the semi-professional regional division. Back in the third tier now, 1860's prospects are still pretty bleak. Relations between Ismail and the club's members remain frosty, and at the time of recording, they sit just a point above Bayern's B team. 8. Fenerbahce. One of Turkey's most historic clubs, Fenerbahce are second only to Galatasaray for Super League titles won with 19, and have attracted the likes of Roberto Carlos, Dirk Kuyt and Robin van Persie to Istanbul. But the last 10 years have not been pretty for fans of the Yellow Canaries. In 2011, Turkish police commenced one of the biggest investigations into match fixing ever seen in football, with Fenerbahce coming out of it the worst. Not only was the legitimacy of their 2010-11 title win called into question, but they were blocked from playing in the following season's Champions League, were handed another 2-year European ban in 2013, and saw their president Aziz Yildirim go to prison. In 2015, following the abolition of the courts which carried out the investigation, all parties were acquitted and Yildirim was released, much to the jubilation of the Fener faithful. But a cloud still hangs over the club, with the truth about what happened in 2011 still largely unclear. Furthermore, they have been dogged with financial trouble, reaching FFP in 2019, and in the same year flirted with a first relegation from the top flight in their history. They may have avoided that humiliation, but Fenerbahce certainly don't feel like the prestigious entity they once were. 7. Derby County. It's rare that we stick a championship side in a Euro Football Daily video, but Derby County have had an exceptionally bad 12 months. Thanks to @LukeHardle on Twitter for suggesting this one. The club that brought Brian Clough to the world's attention, Derby were made famous for winning trophies while playing attractive football under the legendary coach in the early 1970s, and as recently as last season, threatened to return to the Premier League playing similarly exciting stuff under Frank Lampard. But events in the last year suggest all is not well at Pride Park. In September 2019, teammates Tom Lawrence and Mason Bennett were charged with a drink driving offence following an incident which left club captain Richard Keogh with a gruesome knee injury. The Irish defender subsequently had his contract terminated for gross misconduct, while hefty fines were slapped on Lawrence and Bennett, who is now on loan at Millwall. And the club has also faced criticism for its commercial conduct. One of a growing number of English sides to be sponsored by a betting company, Derby used their relationship with 32 Red to help secure the signing of Wayne Rooney. And while claims that the online casino are paying a chunk of the 34-year-old's wages have been refuted by both parties, 32 Red have admitted to rewarding the club £1.5 million for meeting a star player clause, with Rooney handed the 32 jersey to help further promote the company in exchange. Not the best look for a club who in 2018 were voted as the Football League's Community Club of the Year. 6. Barcelona. Authors of a motto which translates in English to more than a club, FC Barcelona have always prided themselves on representing something much bigger than just 11 men on a football field. In the mid-20th century, they were the sporting embodiment of Catalan resistance to the fascist dictatorship of General Franco, and in La Masia have an academy which is committed to nurturing well-rounded mature adults through education, as well as developing elite athletes. Furthermore, they are a club totally owned by its members and until 2011 never had any commercial branding on their shirts. But since then, they have looked more and more like your standard European super club, spending increasingly ridiculous money on players, relying less and less on their academy products, and backed by the likes of Qatari Sports Investment and Rakuten. And the institution seems to be growing ever more toxic behind the scenes, especially after the latest allegations linking President Josep Bartomeu to a social media smear campaign against the club's star players. They may still be competing on the field, but Barca have lost a lot of their shine away from it. 5. West Ham. West Ham are no strangers to controversy. After all, the scandal surrounding their acquisition of Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano in 2006 remains a defining episode in the history of the Premier League. But under the microscope here is their current ownership, which since taking control in 2010 have not enamoured themselves too well with the fan base. On taking over at Upton Park, David Scholes and Sullivan unveiled a 10-point 7-year plan to transform the Hammers into a Champions League club. 10 years down the line and they are embroiled in a relegation battle, having spent nearly £200 million on players over the last 2 seasons. What's more, Manuel Pellegrini, the only truly elite managerial appointment made by the club in the modern era, has been sacked and replaced by David Moyes. It's no surprise then that fans of the club are in a constant state of despair, with their anger at the ownership boiling over in 2018 when Gold Sullivan and Vice Chairman Karen Brady had to be escorted out of the London Stadium for fears of mass violence following a defeat to Burnley. And they haven't taken any chances since. After Hammers fans organised a protest for their recent visit to Liverpool, the club requested to have their seating allocation at Anfield reduced by over 1,000, with some claiming it was to hide visibility of the demonstration. 4. Sporting Club de Portugal. But when it comes to fan protests, the efforts of West Ham fans are incredibly tame when compared to the bloody scenes witnessed at the training ground of Sporting Club de Portugal in 2018. It all started with the volatile behaviour of club president Bruno de Carvalho, who took to publicly criticising Bas Dost, Fabio Coentrão and others on social media after a defeat to Atletico Madrid in the Europa League, and when confronted by said players on the issue, slapped bans on 19 of them. Then a month later, as the side was preparing for the Portuguese Cup final, the training ground was ambushed by 50 ultras who assaulted a number of players. Bas Dost was beaten up, thrown to the ground and needed 6 stitches on his head, while another player was left psychologically destroyed by the attack, according to his agent. 7 players terminated their contracts almost immediately, and the club lost a significant amount of talent that summer. Meanwhile, Carvalho was voted out as president after being linked to the attack, with some even accusing him of ordering it himself, and even faced trial over the disgraceful incident in 2019. Sporting have since recovered from the ordeal, but for one summer, their reputation was in pieces. 3. Hamburg. Once one of the continent's most feared clubs, Hamburg won multiple Bundesliga titles and the European Cup in their late 70s, early 80s heyday, with superstars like Kevin Keegan and Franz Beckenbauer passing through the Volkspark Stadion. And until relatively recently, Die Rothhosen prided themselves on being the only founding member of the Bully to have never been relegated from the German top flight. But after 55 years of safety, they finally went down in May 2018, with some fans so incensed that they littered the pitch with flares in protest at the relegation, prompting police to halt their final game of the season. However, they should have been prepared, with the side having narrowly escaped the drop multiple times in previous campaigns. The club, which helped develop attacking talents such as Raphael van der Vaart and Son Heung-min, truly dropped off a cliff in the mid-2010s. In their final 4 seasons in the Bundesliga, only once did a Hamburg player score more than 5 league goals in a campaign, and the side averaged a woeful win ratio of 26%, despite spending €121 million on transfers in that time period, a hefty amount for a German club. And they can't even claim the bragging rights in their own city anymore. This season, fierce rival St. Pauli did the double over them for the first time ever, stripping them of the little prestige they had left. 2. Manchester City. One of the most high-profile scandals to hit football in recent years, Manchester City's financial misdemeanours were finally met with some meaningful action in 2020, with UEFA banning the English club from European competition for 2 seasons. At the time of recording, the club is registering an appeal through the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But whether or not the decision is upheld, the findings from the investigation cast a shadow over the club's achievements in the last decade. Since the Abu Dhabi Group's takeover in 2008, City have won 2 FA Cups, 5 League Cups and 4 Premier League titles, signed some of the continent's most talented players, and hired the world's most coveted coach in Pep Guardiola. But this was seemingly all built on lies, with leaked emails revealing owner Sheikh Mansour had fronted the majority of the money for the club's shirt sponsorship deal with Etihad, meaning City had effectively circumvented financial fair play regulations by cooking the books, all while racking up by far the biggest net spend in Europe. This isn't the first time City have been caught red-handed. They got off relatively lightly in 2014. But UEFA's decision to act decisively this time round adds more gravity to the club's wrongdoings. And with similar accusations of FFP breaching also being thrown at PSG and Juventus, plenty more reputations could be at stake in the near future. 1. Inter Milan. Racism has always been a big problem in football, particularly in fan culture, and while it is prevalent across Europe, the way in which it has been dealt with in Italy in recent years has been especially baffling. From a Napoli fan blacking up in support of Kalidou Koulibaly, to Serie A themselves using artworks of monkeys to head up their anti-racism campaign, there seems to be a genuine lack of understanding when it comes to tackling racism in the sport. And while it is perhaps harsh to single out Inter Milan on this particular issue, the response from a section of their fans to the racist abuse of Romelu Lukaku by Cagliari supporters in September 2019 was simply unbelievable. In a letter to the Belgian striker, the Curva Nord Ultras said, "We are really sorry you thought that what happened in Cagliari was racist," before explaining that the abuse he received was in fact not racist and should instead be seen as a sign of respect. While this response can't be attributed to the majority of fans or the Inter hierarchy, the Curva Nord do represent a powerful wing of the club, and their words brought shame on an institution which developed one of Italy's greatest ever black players in Mario Balotelli. Furthermore, this echoed the similarly weak response by Juventus to Moise Kean's treatment the previous season, which was also at the hands of Cagliari fans. From this, it's clear that much more needs to be done at every level of the Italian game. So those were our 10 clubs that destroyed their reputations. What did you make of it? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, why not click on screen right now? And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to Euro Football Daily. See you next time.